to order. Mr. Bruno, would you like to say the prayer
Yes.
this evening?
Loving God, as we come together tonight for the city of Waterville, we pause to ask you to be with us and guide our way. May your spirit of peace surround all we say and do this evening. We ask for your strength to do what is best for the good of Waterville. Lord God, as servants of your people, we pray that you grant us a share of your wisdom. Amen.
Amen.
Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Mr. Bruno?
Here.
Mrs. Bruno?
Here.
Mr. Fry?
Here.
Mayor Brody?
Here.
Mr. Rosick? Mr. Pedro?
Here.
Mrs. Duncan?
Here.
I'd like to make a motion this evening to excuse Mr. Rosick. He is out of town, and I will need a second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next, we have the approval of our minutes from our regular council meeting, April 8th, 2019. We need a motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any changes, comments, or corrections on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
I'll need to abstain.
Next, we have citizens' comments, and I do have one from David Ruman. Not sure if I got that right. If you don't mind, step into the mic and state your name and address, please.
David Ruman, 428 North River Road, Waterville. So, Tim and I have been talking, and I wanted to come up to talk about a situation that happened Saturday night, just to make everybody aware and to continue to make sure that we're living up to that homepage that's the safest city in Ohio, right? 9:45 Saturday night, my wife and I came home with our 5-year-old, and she went down to get Easter baskets and all that stuff to find water all over the basement floor. And we had a situation where we were getting a 4-inch geyser coming up out of the floor drain in the middle of the basement. So, you know, you always get those things going through your mind. What the heck do? You know, you're not sure, okay, is it my issue? What's the issue? I called one plumber, one of those Roto-Rooter guys, and they said, well, we'll call you back. Well, they never called me back. Well, fortunately, I called another one because I'm not good at taking no for an answer. I guess that's the salesman in me. And they told me, they said, is water coming up? Yeah. Did you flush the toilet? Did you run the washer? Blah, blah, blah. No. Then it's the city's problem. So I'm like, okay. So fortunately, for the last 43 years of my life, I've lived in Waterville, and I live now in the house that my parents built in 1979. So I'm pretty familiar with it, as is my dad, you know, so I'm calling him. He's got the plans out from when he built it. We're checking out the pipes, all that stuff, right? So then, you know, between friends and whatnot, we're trying to figure out how do we stop this thing. So in the meantime, I called Tim up. Unfortunately, I interrupted his Saturday night, and I said, hey, can you give me a hand? He made some phone calls. Next thing you know, the police are there, took the statement to kind of assess the situation, and then from there, they got a hold of Rick Hanna on his personal cell phone. So that set into motion, getting him to come out, which he was totally fine in doing, and you know, there's 3 people I really want to thank. First is Tim. Second is the police department for getting out there so quick. And third is Rick for taking time out of his Saturday night to come out and check the situation out. 45 minutes later, he came down. We were outside, and he told us, he goes, yeah, we got a problem, and I'm glad you called. And he said both of our pumps went out on River Road. The primary pump had an electrical failure. The secondary pump didn't come back up. So basically what happened is a combination of rain and the sewage, just the sewage in general, it filled up. You know, everybody can say what they want about stormwater getting into a sanitary sewer, but it happens, right? We all know it does. And it built up. Unfortunately, I was at the low level. It got to the pipe where mine enters into the sewer. It backed up into the house, and that's what I was getting. So fortunately, it was only happening for about 5 minutes before my wife caught it. But that was the fortunate part, because I travel a lot for work. I was in Morocco last week, so if it would have happened when I was overseas, that would have been a real problem. So we were able to stop it, make the phone calls. I knew the right people to call, but the reality is, I bet you 99% of the citizens here in Waterville don't know who to call. So, you know, the whole purpose of this is to say, okay, what can we do as a city to prevent this from happening in the future? You know, I don't think it's adding a third pump, but there's some fail-safes. There is a red light on that building. I know it well. I rode bikes by it since I was 7, 8 years old. I don't know whether it's working. I haven't seen that light on. Maybe it's just because they haven't had a failure in a long time. But there for a while, there used to be a red light, green light on there. And the police department knew that when they drove by it, they saw a red light. Houston, we got a problem. We got to make a phone call. So that's really what the catalyst was. But in this day and age, if I can hook a sensor up to my rental house on Carroll Street and monitor the sump pump level from my cell phone anywhere in the world, I got to believe that we can have notification when we're losing pumps, right? Sure. And we've got numerous pumps. I mean, this isn't the only one. What are there, Tim? Probably 4 or 5 of them in town, something like that. So that's part of it. And then the other thing is, and maybe I missed it and I had my wife look earlier too, but I don't see any emergency numbers on the website to be able to contact anybody. That's the first place I went. Because I mean, this thing's always with me. And I'm looking, I'm like, okay, where's the emergency number? Where's the emergency number? Because that's what I was going to call first before I bothered Tim on a Saturday night, right? Mommy has them right on the sewer, city sewer, water department. There's for emergency, and there's a number. Now, I didn't call it, so I don't know what you'd get at midnight on a Saturday night when your basement's backing up. But so fortunately for us, we caught it very, very quick. But and we were able to stop it, and I had the friends and the connections to try to get some information to the right people, and we got it sorted. I did have the disaster cleanup folks out there today. I've already been in contact with my insurance. It's not going to be cheap to fix, of course, but it's in process. They've got everything cleaned, it's drying out, so on and so forth. But it was interesting because Rick told me, he said, Dave, he goes, he's worked, what, for the city, 35, 40 years, I mean, a long time. He goes, this is the most bizarre thing I've ever seen. He goes, and all the times over the years we've had pump failures down here, we've never had anything that far down. Never have we had any issues with the houses. I'm 8 houses from the township line, okay, on the riverside. So we've never had anything that in the 40 years that house has been built, since my parents built it, never had an issue with anyone. I don't even have a sump pump. Most of those houses, we drain, all of our foundation drains go right out the hill. So that's pretty common down there. So that's why I don't have to worry about that. But I never planned on something coming up to the sewer. So there's a couple things just, so we can all just have it on our radar that there's gotta be a notification system, I would think. Because stuff happens, I get it. I'm not here to throw anybody under the bus, but in terms of any manufacturing or any business environment, there's one thing that you all got to think about, or we all have to think about: root cause, corrective action. And it isn't meant to point fingers. It isn't meant to do anything other than bring it to the attention and say, what can we do to fix it? I know there's been conversations happening today. Tim mentioned to me that there's been people that are involved that are trying to figure out how we can keep this from happening. So that's it. So I just wanted to come up and let you guys know that we're in process of getting this fixed. I will make the ask, and I don't know, if there's any ability to do this, but is there? Because I think I was the only one impacted on the whole street, which is really bizarre to me. But we were the only ones impacted, especially with 2 pumps going down like that. But is there an opportunity to cover my deductible? So that would be, my ask. I mean, there was $500 that I wrote a check for this morning that was for my deductible. Now I get it if it was, 1 pump went down and there was another one going and it just couldn't keep up. But gosh, we've had more rain than that on over a 2-day period than what we had Friday or Saturday. So it's just one of those things. It was a perfect storm, no pun intended, of things going on. So there we go.
Well, thank you for coming in so we know about it. Definitely we'll look into it. We'll get back to you on that question.
Yeah, sure.
For sure. Very unusual. Barb, you live along that path. Anything on that side?
It's bizarre.
Any of your neighbors? Nothing? That is really,
I
really
mean,
odd.
because typically it'll back up towards North Street.
Right.
Because you guys have probably seen, when it gets real bad, they'll put the portable pump in there.
Right.
And they'll pop that
Right.
manhole, and they did. I think, Tim, you may have seen or somebody saw it, because that's what Rick was going to do when he left our house. He had a couple other trucks, and they were down there setting that up to try to relieve the pressure. Because we said to him, we're like, hey, how long is it going to be? before, you know, we can run water. And he's like, just a couple hours. Well, it's midnight, so we just said, okay, we'll deal with it in the morning. But yeah, that was pretty much
That is odd, though.
that it took that long then to draw it. We even took the manhole cover off out of the street, and we were looking at it because, you know, my buddies don't like to take no for an answer. Like, there's got to be something going on. So when we
Right.
looked down there, there was a lot of water in that tube going down there. So
I just happened to drive down there for another reason, so I just went through Waterworks Park down your street.
you went the other way.
Oh, you're the
I'm
other
this
way,
way.
okay.
You're on North River.
But
I'm
the other
North
way
River.
too, yeah, I'm like, what, a lot of water. I was looking at those backyards. I was
Well,
like,
my backyard's flooded right
Yeah.
now. I mean, I've got a second river flowing through there right now. But
yeah, I was driving down there and Waterworks was worse than I've seen it in a while. I was like, huh, that's bad.
Yeah,
It would
it's
take a
just-
lot of land down there to get out of it, but we'll look into
Right,
it.
yeah.
I don't know if John has any update from today, cause we don't have our department heads at the
No,
second
that's
meeting
fine.
of the month. They just come once a month.
Well, it does have an alarm on it, and my understanding is that the alarm failed because the main pump failed, and then the second pump has a float that should have kicked on.
But
and
didn't.
and that didn't, so, I guess in terms of the float, we wouldn't have known it unless the water was high, so.
Well, it's like a sump pump, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right, exactly. So that appears to be the problem, and, you know, maybe we need to look at some kind of a battery alarm or something that's.
Something, yeah.
Independent of the, you know, the electric that runs the pumps and things like that.
Well, not to mention the fact that you guys are protecting your asset too. There's 3 foot of water in that
Right.
building when Rick opened up that door. So I gotta believe there was some damage to something that was inside that building, because I doubt that it's set up to handle 3 foot of water.
Right.
You know, and such. So, and that he had to draw down first then before he could, you know, kick everything in. So, anyway.
Yeah,
It
all
was
the-
just, I think it was just a perfect setup of all those things that all kind of, the domino effect, right? But I guess, you know, I know that now that I'm the lowest guy in the area. Story of my life. But, yeah. So, anyway.
That's
There you go.
unfortunate, but thank you for
Yeah, no
letting us
problem.
know, and I'm glad you were
Okay.
able to get a hold of one of the council people, so.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Could you just spell your last name for me?
V as in Victor, R-O-O-M-A-N.
And I probably
Thank
missed
you.
Just like a car with an
Rumen.
A-N.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other citizen comments?
Mayor, if I may, while our guest has come up, just to close the loop, Dave, I did call John this morning and explain to him, but more importantly, it was so cool to call the non-emergency phone number, which was picked up by the Lucas County 911. I explained the situation. I didn't realize it was Dave. I got the address, but I was at a crowded. It was loud where I was. But anyways, the point I'm making is within 5 minutes or sooner, that deputy, the sheriff called me back and said, we've notified the Waterville Police. They're going to look into it. And instantaneously on my call was Waterville Police Department calling me, thinking it was me. And I explained to him it was Dave's house. And so kudos to all the people that made it work.
It was quick. It was less than 10 minutes from when I made the call to you, Tim.
It was 9 minutes, Dave. I counted it was 9 minutes.
We can definitely look at the website though, because the water type emergency, that'd be a good one to have a number on there. But they can always call the number you called, Tim,
Yeah.
for sure, but
Or
yeah.
if we're not gonna put a number on there, then
Any-
just let people know, here's the number you do.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You know, just something.
Definitely call it either way, but yeah.
Yeah.
We'll make sure it's
course.
on the front page for you, yeah.
Cheers.
More information is good, for sure. Thank you.
Okay.
And the Easter Bunny did show up.
Easier way
Yeah.
to show up.
Yeah, the baskets were dry.
Okay, my name is Susan Meyer. I'm at 274 North River Road, so we're almost neighbors. But at any rate, I just wanted to follow up on last week when we talked about the district fire department. Has there been any notification published for that meeting next week? And where?
In the Mommy Mirror?
In the Mommy in the Mirror, her article, but anything else?
Well, we have it on our sign.
Is it on the sign now?
Yeah, it's on the
Okay.
sign.
It's on Channel 5.
Channel 5, it's on Channel 5, the cable channel.
Oh, the cage,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So that is, and that
Is it on the
meeting,
website?
I couldn't
Yeah.
find,
Make sure it's
Yeah.
on there.
yeah.
Okay, that's a
It
good
isn't
one.
on the calendar, but it is,
On the web.
yeah.
Announcement.
Notifications, yeah, right, it's on notifications. And yeah, are you all talking about this in other times, or do you just talk about it when you get to the meetings? how does that work for?
We only talk about it at public meetings or the joint meeting we have with the other people.
Okay,
There was a committee that selected the feasibility study group. It was between two groups, and that was a couple representatives from Waterville, one from the township, the fire chiefs, it was Chief Wambo then, and two from White House. And actually Providence was there, and Monclova was at the first meeting. But they had already put a couple levies on, and they had already made some modifications. They have a lot more citizens than we do in a bigger geographic area. They had already done some things 2 years ago with the feasibility study. So they decided not to be a part of it, even though we're mutual aid. So we invited everybody that was mutual aid to each other that's answering all the calls now together. So that was a different meeting than our council meeting, but that was with just not a quorum of our council, that was an open meeting. Yeah, at the end of last year.
so this next meeting is at
White House chambers,
the chambers?
council
Okay.
chambers, yeah.
Council chambers, and that is where?
In White House on, I don't have that address, Providence Street at the administration building.
So if you go to
Is
the
that
stop
listed?
sign
Right
on
next to the
64,
White
turn
House,
left,
yeah.
and it's
I'm
right
sorry.
Is it the
right.
administration building?
Yeah, it's in
Yes.
your packet.
The meeting will be, I have it right here, in the White House Village Council Chambers, White House Village Hall, 6925 Providence Street, White House, Ohio. And that should have been posted, our special meeting that we have to post, because we'll all be there. So at this meeting, we had our feasibility where they went through just the feasibility, which pretty much stated the information where we all stood with things like what we had, how we operated. So this one, we're gonna talk a little bit tonight, but it's still continuing studying it because what we did with the Union Cemetery is we all appointed a couple people. We're working kind of on a group thing with that because the township asked, and there's different issues that cause us to need to redo our cemeteries, how we do them. So we'll probably end up with a committee that has a couple representatives on it from each entity to do further study. We're not done studying it.
Okay.
There's obviously bigger questions. That feasibility, as they kept stating at the beginning of the meeting, two people, Jim Bagdonis, our retired administrator, kept stating what feasibility meant in this case.
Right.
Is something feasible? Well, how do you get there? So the next parts are the details, the parts, how you would do it if you still think it's feasible after you get more into the numbers. So, and there are a lot of people out there that have them in Ohio. So the next step will be people that actually form them and things like that. That's who you talk to. People
Right.
that actually run them, how they run. Because the person that gave us the study, they hadn't actually put one together or ran one. So.
Right, and I was just,
But they are all over Ohio. I've got tons of examples of them, yeah. I have,
but again,
yeah.
I'm saying that I think this is a possibility. I mean, obviously, it's a feasibility study, anything is feasible.
Right.
There's very few things that
How
are feasible.
right.
But I haven't seen the support or the asking for support for our current fire department. I mean, you haven't gone to the voters and said, do you need, we need this for our fire department to make it work better, to be able to pay our people what they need to have good people. And we haven't done that yet.
Well, I think
That's
the
part of what
discussion.
we're
Part of the
doing,
That's
yeah.
part of what we're gonna do.
Because if
Do
we all
keep
tried
what
to-
we have and improve,
Right,
or do we
right.
create something new?
Right.
And usually doing it on your own as a small town just tends to be a lot tougher in today's times. And the whole reason we're doing it is because we didn't have enough people answering. And it was no
Well,
one's
yeah,
fault.
but if we don't have the
but-
people answering,
Yeah,
why is the district didn't have the people answering?
because we'll hire some full-time people, yeah. So
Well, we could still hire those people, couldn't we? I mean, as a.
budgetarily for Waterville, probably not as many as a group of
Well,
towns,
if we put
yeah.
6 mills on the levy, we could. I mean, I'm just
No,
saying, I
yeah.
would like to see you think about asking the
Right.
voters to do.
That's why we're
Waterville.
exploring
That's
this
the-
option,
that's the
right?
discussion.
Okay,
It's been part of it,
good enough.
yeah.
Yeah, good questions. I mean.
No, they're very good,
Fantastic.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, 'cause that's what we
So
wanna.
next Monday, we'll have another meeting of the group,
Yeah,
the big
okay.
group.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Any other citizen comments?
Mayor,
Yes.
this student, Rachel, is here.
Oh,
I think she wants to be mayor. I'm not sure, but I think she's gonna come up to the podium and she's gonna tell us what's happened in the last couple of weeks.
Couple weeks that we haven't seen her, all right. State your name again, though, for the record today, so.
Hi, my name is Rachel Allison. I go to Notre Dame, and I'm here to do my government project yet again.
How many hours do you have
left
This
now.
will be my last hour.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We'll try to make it 60 and keep it there.
You are welcome to come back.
Yes, anytime. Yep. Well, thank you for coming to ours.
Yeah.
Mayor, I have one question, the tough one, okay?
Okay.
So tell us, you've been here a couple times, 2 or 3 times.
Mhm.
What did you learn? What one thing?
Well, I didn't really know about any of these before, like city council meetings. Like, I've never even heard of them before. So, like, I kind of like learned like how they work, like how the people of the city are actually involved in the government of the city. So that's
Good.
pretty cool to learn.
Good. All right. Thank you.
Thanks for coming. No other comments? Alrighty, next we have our staff reports, and first we have our administrator, Mr. Gokenauer.
Thank you, Mayor. In addition to my report, I wanted to mention that ODOT is again closing the Waterville Bridge for another concrete deck pour. They're gonna do that on Thursday, April 25th, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. into Friday, April 26th. And we've notified police, fire, the Anthony Wayne schools, so everyone will be aware of it. And I think it went very well last time. We didn't get any complaints on it. The next item is also a road-related item. I don't know if anyone has noticed, ODOT is going to be closing the westbound exit from southbound 475 on US 24, and that's scheduled to be closed at 8 o'clock this evening, and it's going to be reopened in September of 2019. And it's a safety improvement. Apparently, they're going to realign it or straighten it or something. But that is also occurring. If anyone has any questions.
Well, from the 16 people that got caught on the bridge when they closed it 20 minutes before their sign said that they weren't very happy.
My,
Write
there
that
were
down.
people on the bridge
I heard from a lot of them, though, there was a line to come across.
to come
I
across.
think the time said 7 and they closed it at 20 of, so 16 or 18 people in
So
the
they had to go
line.
to 475 or.
Well, yes, I heard they went various places.
All right.
My wife included.
Oh.
She said, I went home.
That
They
makes
closed
sense.
our bridge early.
I have a quick question, John, about number 18, your discussion with Lucas County Soil and Water District.
Yes.
So was that specific to the drainage ditches throughout the city? Was that discussion about that?
Well, we looked at, I guess it'd be the northwest part of the city, and, I think we've mentioned it before, Township Ditch 108, and then the Farnsworth Ditch, looking at maybe trying to clean those out. The Township Ditch would run through our property, the north part of town, and it would also include some of the neighborhood to the south, and then it would go through the greenhouse area and then under Dutch Road, and then the Farnsworth Ditch. We also discussed this at the Public Works Committee meeting. The area on the north side of Dutch, there seems to be some kind of blockage or something, and that seems to be backing water up into Farnsworth Ditch and back into the city. So we did meet with the Soil and Water District and try to get some guidance on how to proceed with some of that stuff. And we'll probably have a meeting with him again, and then we would bring something to council and let you know what we found out on that.
I'd actually like to be a part of that meeting,
Okay.
if you would make a note of that. And then, did they bring maps and everything?
Well, they brought some parcel information, if we would want to assess people for it. All the properties that are in the drainage area, that's kind of what we looked at. That was one of the things we took a look at. So there's quite a few for Township Ditch 108, a lot more than we thought. So that was very interesting. But
Well, yeah,
so yeah, I'll put that down.
because we've had residences on Waterville, Monclova come in, what was that, last fall?
About
Last
the
spring,
ditch.
maybe? Was that a year ago?
It actually, today, that was part of my driving around, I went that way first, and I was surprised it wasn't worse,
Okay.
considering that
So
amount
it
of
seems to be
rain.
working.
Well, maybe they cleaned out further down, like our previous administrator said, a lot of it had to start. You know what I'm saying? A lot of
Everything
the backup
connects.
was not us, it was further down the line.
And that was really kind of the purpose of the meeting, is what can we do in the township?
Right.
And, you know, can we get some of the township property owners maybe to agree, at least we could maybe clean it up a little bit farther to the north, and maybe not get everybody, but get enough so we can, get these obstructions cleared out, on the north side of Dutch, so.
But is the responsibility ultimately Lucas County, who manages the drainage basins? Who's,
If we
Once
were
the ditch is
west of
petitioned and cleaned, then it goes to the county
county.
for maintenance after that. Everybody who is benefited, and that could be 3 drops of water versus being right on the ditch, gets assessed first. They clean it, then the county takes over. So that ditch must not have been cleaned and assessed, so that's what'll have to happen first to have the county take over the whole ditch.
Otherwise, originally, you're responsible for, no one's responsible.
Nobody,
for the ditch,
basically, you
yeah.
just
But
let
then
the
it doesn't
fill
cattails
it, yeah.
grow and the logs set.
And we were kind of looking at, maybe looking at the later plats of some of the subdivisions to the west. We'll get that ditch, Farnsworth ditch in particular, on the county's maintenance schedule. Then and as we develop into that area, then it'll always be on their maintenance schedule, and we won't have to worry about it in the future. So that's kind of something we're taking a look at as well.
and it would be like our public works director to make sure that these things are done on a regular basis, so they don't back up.
Well, if for example, we got a lot of that ditch on the county, you know, on their cleaning schedule, they would be the ones that would take care of it. Because,
Well, who makes sure that they're doing it though?
well,
The residents who
Right.
say it's not draining,
It's, okay,
Yeah.
okay,
you know, cause they're the first-hand ones that see
that
bunch
is
of,
overflowing,
what in the ditch, which
That's all.
normally is what slows things down.
okay.
Guess that's a good question. If you go, how often is that schedule? How does that rotation work? Is this yearly? Is it-
Yeah.
No, it's as
When you
needed,
complain?
I'm sure.
Yeah, or as needed, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
sure.
That's all I have.
Speaking of water, and I know this is unusual, 3 days of rain, and I was looking at the Parks and Rec Committee minutes, so this is also for Parks and Rec probably. So Waterworks Park, we moved all the dirt we had sitting there a while ago, and it's really flooded, which I would expect right now. I mean, it really, really is, but have we thought about, we had a lot of ideas of what to do down there. Has anybody asked to use the ballpark yet? No, okay, and they haven't used it for a few years. So we held off on like putting any money in that ballpark because no one was using it, mostly because it's all flooded in the spring, but, have we revisited what we're going to do down there? Cause
Well-
there is so much land open down there that we kind of forget about because it's on the riverside.
They did use it last year at the end of the year.
Yeah, I thought
And,
there was.
and there were people playing ball in that field in July and August.
Yeah,
Charlie Duck Jr.
he used it, but
Right.
he was willing to do some of the work on it.
Right,
Because he does construction, so.
but he hasn't been in this year to ask about it again, but
Right.
maybe it's because it's so flooded.
Well, I know Wapsa wasn't putting it on
No.
their rotation, cause they have newer fields that aren't flooded in Monclova and stuff, so.
Yep.
I guess that's just one question, is we kinda forget about it, but yet, sitting there and people are talking about pickleball courts and there's a lot of other passive things you might be able to do down there.
Well, and the problem is of filling that, it's a floodplain,
Right.
so you
So
really
need an
can't fill it.
activity that.
You can't
isn't-
fill it,
Right.
because the Army Corps of Engineers
Aren't gonna
shouldn't
let you.
approve something like that, because we need the water to be able to go somewhere, right?
Right. And it can just be a passive park.
Yeah,
There
no,
is a
no.
walking path.
Right.
And the pond is fine, I'm guessing, but
Yeah.
I didn't really get up and look at that, but as long as that is a man-made pond.
Right,
Okay.
yeah, I guess.
One thought that's
yeah.
very busy, I don't know if anybody wants it, but things like passive things like frisbee golf and whatnot, those things are always busy. If you drive to BG and you drive to, up on Bancroft, they have one at Ottawa Park, I believe it is, and a couple other places. I'm always amazed on a nice day how many people are out doing that, but maybe that park is only, since it is in a floodplain,
Good
it might need
suggestion.
some other ideas. But anyway, since Ken isn't here, if you're having a staff meeting, just the parks in general, we're getting ready to do the food truck thing again and have everybody up there. I saw that email, but I don't know what he has on his cleanup day planned, but just some general maintenance, like I looked at all of the parks, the Bear, the Conrad, the two big ones. I know he's working on, the lights are in the budget for Conrad this year, but just some, general maintenance. For example, at Bear, I know this is one of Mrs. Bruno's pet peeves, but, the weeds will start growing soon because we don't go along and like clean the old leaves, and we don't do the curbs, like we don't clean them with a blower or something. So it could really stand to be cleaned up before everybody gets in there and uses it, both parks, but especially in Bear Park. And also just some basics, like we don't want people parking certain parts, but all the yellow paint is wearing off. Just the general cleanup, mulching, weeds.
Spring cleanup kind of thing.
But better than we've ever done before. So my question is, I don't remember exactly what we outsource. I know it's about 50-50, but I'd be curious if Bear and Conrad, those are the two main ones that everybody uses, if those are outsourced or not. So if it's our guys, and whoever's on buildings and grounds, that they could do a little more, you might wanna drive up there and take a look, because there's quite a bit we could do, but we need to, get in there and look at it. Also, the paving's always an issue. The old fire station building, which I don't expect it to be pristine, that we rent out, it has a couple things going on too, that paint-wise and starting to look bad. So I just noticed that both of those parks probably need some real attention. It could be paint, could be just maybe if you take a drive or take Ken, or might be in Rick Meyring's area. Anybody else on parks? So just for you guys to hear that too, but this is a good time of year to look at it, and I read the email about the, food trucks coming, and I thought, wouldn't it be nice if we had the parks ready, ready to go? It's all the details in it, so. I think that was it. I wanted to pass on to Ken if you see him.
Sure.
All right, any other administrator questions?
Well, in line with what you were saying, will we be hiring another part-timer this summer for
that was on there.
Public
Yeah.
Works?
So there
Maybe
we
since
go.
we're saving all that money, maybe we could hire two,
Do some painting.
with the mowing contract. That
We
mowing-
should have advertised for that. I believe last week we talked about it, and so it should be out advertised, and so we'll be.
I know they help primarily with the lawn mowing, but a lot of that could fall under that. Basic cleanup. Law Director, Mr. Dombey.
Briefly, we're gonna renew our PUCO aggregation certificate for electricity. And I met with Senator Gavarone about the new bills to basically save the unprofitable First Energy problems. And we'll be watching the legislature. I could use an executive session to discuss pending or threatened litigation at the end of council. That is all.
Thank you. Finance Director, Mr. Gokenhour.
Yes, we are still kind of working through some of our conversion issues, minor conversion issues between our old software and new software system, so apologize, we don't have a full February month-end report, but I did include the RETA income tax reports for February, March, and February, the city received $316,821, which was about $61,574 more than we received in 2018. And then for March, the city received $269,880. Again, that was quite a bit more than we received in March of 2018, about $72,000 more to be exact. And then year to date, we've received $835,478, and that's about 22% of our estimated income tax revenue for 2019. Just looking in general, and I mentioned this before, the net profit collections are a little behind than where they were last year by about 33,000. It's not a fact of the state of Ohio collecting that, because we've only gotten about $15 from the state of Ohio for our net profit collection. So whatever's going on, it is a little behind where we were last year.
So we haven't received what's going to Columbus?
Right. The
We don't
idea,
know
the
when.
idea was that they were getting the filings from the net profit filers, and
Right.
that money would eventually come back to us, but
There is no set monthly date or?
no, according to their regulations, we should get something every month, but we never do, and it should be regular, and we never do, so, last year, I think we got 3 payments over the whole year from the state.
Oh my gosh, all right. Stay tuned, I guess, huh?
Yes.
Just a point of clarification on that, since I do know something about the tax side of that. That is only for companies that elect to have
Right.
their money go to the state. So I would actually imagine there aren't a lot of Waterville ones that would make that election. Usually it's people that file in a lot of cities.
Cities, right.
The state, they elect to do what we buy. So, stay tuned, but it might not be as bad as we think. So my
Right.
guess is a lot of them that are Waterville businesses don't elect to do that because they probably just file in Waterville and whatever else. So I don't think it's the state holding on to the money.
Could just be a coincidence, though, it went down. It's down compared to last year?
Well, the state did increase their budget by like 100%. So they are having problems sending the money back to the municipalities. I did notice that in their budget, that it got increased 100% for their refunds and processing and administrative part of their staff, so.
Alrighty. Treasurer, Mr. Schultz?
Mr. Cook and I mentioned we're working on some
Working on
minor reconciliation items.
Okay.
As part of the conversion, we'll have some next.
Conversion's going okay on the new software, fairly well?
Yes, just some outstanding items we're gonna work on.
It's all
Together.
it will all be worth it, right? The software, this was a big one, yeah. All right, communications from council, start with Mrs. Duncan.
No report this evening, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Pedro?
A couple. Not prepared in detail to talk about it tonight, but I would like to bring it up next meeting. Knowing that the Public Works Committee met the other day, and it looks like we will be approving road repairs for Disher and Cedar Lane. That's on the agenda. I was at a meeting a week ago, and I didn't grab the flyer, but John, you might be familiar with, there's a funding mechanism with ODOT, and I want to call it PACE, P-A-C-E. However, this speaker was talking about the ODOT has funding that's available. It's a low interest that can be set aside for sewers, for water, for roads. And I just wonder if we might be late in the game this year, might consider looking into it. It's a low rate of 3%, and because I'm looking at our list here, we have 2 more roads down the list. Wilkshire for 15,000, Maumee Avenue for 35,000, and 3rd Street for 17. So 2 questions. All the bids aren't in yet for the 2 roads we're talking about, but if there is $40,000 left over, can we consider Wilkshire and Maumee and or 3rd Street?
Well, I don't have the exact number in front of me, but when we approve the budget, we are spending about 500, I believe it's around 500,000 for, Michigan Avenue as well. So we probably are a little,
Tight.
strapped for the
Okay.
year, but, the ODOT, I think the ODOT, fund you're thinking of is their infrastructure bank, I think.
Yeah, yes, that's what it is, yeah.
But we did get an ODOT Economic Development Grant for Disher Drive, so we have tried to take advantage of some of that
Okay.
stuff, but,
All right, let me, like I said, I'll come back in the next couple of days. I'll send what I thought I heard and learned, and if we can use it this year, fine, but maybe for next year.
On the list from March, that, since we're already on that one, is that Disher Drive, that's his estimate, the engineer, correct? So, I mean, it could be,
less.
we'll know soon when he starts to, after we do our legislation.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
so
guess maybe
hopefully there's a
my
savings.
recommendation is, as those bids come in, if we're able to do another 1 or 2 streets, it's probably better do it today, because tomorrow, it's gonna be double or triple the cost. So, I'm all about roads.
Well, our share of Michigan Avenue will be in 2019, with that project wall.
Yeah, I think so,
That's our share,
yeah. And I don't, if you remember, in previous years, if we did get good bids, I mean, we would throw it, an alternate out there for like Ohio Street, I think we did that one year as an alternate, and, you know, Maumee and South Third Street, those are, well, I guess South Third Street is relatively inexpensive, and Wilkshire Drive is, so yeah, that could be a possibility, and, you know, we've done that before.
All right, good. And then if I have the floor yet, Mayor?
Yes.
Just want to thank the businesses, including Waterville Body Works and the other firms that participated in the Easter egg hunt. It was a great day in Waterville. The bunny was there. No, it was a great community event, so thanks to the businesses that participated in that. And I'm sure the staff helped out as well. That's all I have.
Thank you. Mr. Fry?
No report this evening.
Mrs. Bruno?
No report this evening, thank you.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes, I just wanted to touch base on regarding a conversation that I had with John last week. I was out at Kroger dropping off some recyclables and noticed, this is like the third time I've seen a television set dropped off in front of the cardboard container. And I don't really know what we can do about it, but I think it might be a good idea to maybe bring back that, or at least contact the company that had the electronic recycling receptacle. So.
Mrs. Bruno?
Is that, I think
Do you
that's
still know
great
about that
idea.
one?
I still have an
I did not
interest
know
in
it was gone.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they removed it after all that hubbubalub last year when all that litter was
Left
going
there.
into the
Oh.
farm field, right?
Right.
And then it was kind of linked to the recycling receptacles. And then Kroger put the pressure
That's a
on
giant TV. Yeah.
Lucas County, and then ours needed to be cleaned up anyway, so we took it out of there. And it's not mine anymore, my nephew bought it, but I still have an interest in it. But, if it was there, he would have picked something like this up. I know people, it is dumping.
He doesn't take those though, right?
Well, flat screens, yeah, you
Okay.
can still recycle flat screens, CRTs, absolutely not. Unfortunately, throw those in a landfill, because nobody wants to pay to recycle these days. But, the point is, if the receptacle was still there, he would have a crew and they would pick that up and recycle it. But people should not be dumping, but people do, right, they leave stuff outside receptacles all the time.
Right.
But, yeah, I mean, I'll mention it to my nephew.
We could talk to it.
But also, I think maybe a letter to Kroger, you know, in support of bringing back the electronics recycling receptacle would probably be a good thing too.
Was there a big issue with it, or was it just?
No,
Okay.
you know, it was, you know, at that time, the manager was just like, he wanted everything gone.
Oh, okay, because of the litter.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
of the litter, he didn't
Which
want to
is
be a
better
part of the
this year,
controversy.
but it's
Yeah.
not as bad.
Right, so far, right?
Yeah, so far, yeah.
So far.
Good
So,
point.
Okay, yeah, but thank you, I'll mention it to.
Anything else?
the owner there.
Mr. Bruno? All right, I want to bring up, the joint meeting on our Monday off. So next Monday, we already went over it, where it is, what time, 6 PM, so it's not 7:30 like the regular council meeting. And then, we had just the overview of the feasibility study, and we haven't been able to talk since then. So if council wouldn't mind, could you give your comments? We'll start over again with Mrs. Duncan if you have any. I'll start with mine if it helps. I think, I know Mr. Bagdonis, who's been kind of heading up the study for us as one of his projects, spoke to one trustee, and they talked about ways to start exploring it. But at the end of the day, my comment to Mr. Bagdonis was, I think we have a committee similar to what we did for the Union Cemetery, which has a couple representatives on it from each entity to explore it further. And that would just mean bringing in people to actually hear about people who have formed them, the pros and the cons, and then obviously they could hash it out and then present the information to us, or, you know, each rep could come back to their council. So actually, we don't have anything decided, obviously. And the feasibility study, there were obviously things we already knew because it was informational. But I'm not sure about the financial piece of it, because that was one scenario. And I had a lot of questions, and a lot of them weren't answered in the two scenarios that he showed us. So I will have more questions on actual running and what it costs and all those types of things. But I definitely had questions on what they put out there. And some things they didn't even address in there. They didn't really address assets and a couple other huge things that you would talk about in a study. So those are my questions. So I have quite a few. So what I would hope to do, just to let everybody know, is it would probably be 2 people, and I don't think it would be a ton of meetings, but yes, it would be some meetings. And I'll probably have to pick a couple people to do that. Maybe 1 or 2. Mrs. Duncan, start over. And if you have no comment, that's fine.
Yeah, no,
If you have any questions. to
I have
bring
more
up,
questions than
answers.
at this point. I,
Yeah.
don't think it's necessarily, but I would love to see a committee and do the real digging, because that was a real nice overview of what could be done maybe if we did and it's not really it's not what I actually expected from the committee, from what they did.
Right.
What they presented. So I would like to get into the numbers and see what we can do.
All right. Mr. Pedro?
Well, it dovetails into what I failed to mention earlier, that the Public Safety Committee is meeting this Thursday. I mentioned that a couple weeks ago, and I know those committee members will probably had a chance to review the feasibility study and have more comments.
And you can bring those with you the next Monday, because that's a public meeting. It'll be
Right.
on record.
So, and maybe you sort of said a few things, Mayor, on some of the financing side of it. I'm still gathering data. If there's any statement I'd like to make now, because I've heard from a few people individually, nothing's been decided. We're not gonna do it, or we're not gonna do it, or we're not gonna not do it.
Right.
We're gonna study it some more.
Right.
Unfortunately, it's gonna take more questions and time and energy, and I do believe, at the end of the day, whatever is formed is gonna be better. Now, if that means we stay the way we are, but get better, I'm all for it. I think, Mayor, you said it before, it's all about getting enough firefighters and paramedics to respond to calls. Now, that's the
However we
goal.
do that.
Now, how can we get there?
Right.
Thank you.
Agreed. Mr. Fry?
I'm still finalizing my research of it, so I don't have any comments this evening, but I agree that there definitely should be a committee formed, and dig into it further, so, so that we can determine if this is the right thing to do or not, and then move forward from there, but, so I'll just reserve any further comments till next Monday. And it's at 7 o'clock, right?
This one said
That's
6.
6 or 7?
Is this wrong? Oh,
That's the.
sorry, that's the cemetery.
That's the
Oh,
cemetery.
to the public, it is 7.
It is
We have
7.
too many meeting announcements
Yes,
in here.
okay, it is 7.
Special
Yeah.
7 o'clock.
Yes.
I pulled it out when we were talking during citizen comments, yeah. Sorry about
I
that.
got it.
7 o'clock.
Yeah.
Still at the White House chamber. Thank you for that.
Yep.
They'd be an hour early though, that'd be good. We'd all be early.
Do your
Better
homework.
than late.
Yeah.
Mrs. Bruno?
Well, I concur with everything that's already been said, and I am the last person that wants to create any more bureaucracy or fat, layers in government, right? So if we can do it in-house and shore up the response time, that's the crisis. We're in a critical state right now. That's why we're even looking at this, right? How can we do it better? Like Pedro said down there, Mr. Pedro. So, yeah, but less talk and more action, right? Let's get this done as quickly as possible, because I have personally known people that have waited well over 20 minutes in an emergency situation, and that's just uncalled for, and it shouldn't happen. And so we have to move on this, and I say we gotta move quickly, so.
Mr. Bruno?
Well, I agree with everything said, and like we all said, we just need some more conversation, and the committee would definitely help with that, and maybe even looking at different municipalities that have held the feasibility, and talk with them, and maybe do a little more digging on information as to how they're successful would make sense too, because getting it was presented to us, and maybe hearing from a few others regarding how it's worked for them would make sense as well. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you, I appreciate it. And yes, that we will plan to do more of that. It would actually be people that have formed them, actually that are in them. There's one gentleman that is on the east side of Ohio, and he is an attorney, has formed them, and he is a part-time fire chief, and he runs the joint district. So he actually knows how, I don't know where we compare size-wise, population and all that, but there are people So it's worth looking at to see what they say. It's just worth taking a look, figuring out if being an Anthony Wayne group makes sense or being separate, but either way. We will start that next week, and it'll probably not be a lot at the meeting if we're setting up a smaller committee, but bring your questions. As some people stated, they may have more. That's your time to throw them out there. So we'll look at all the options. All right, next we have old business, which nothing under there, and then we move to new business. The first one is another discussion. It's about the joint meeting for the approval of tax millage for the Fallen Timbers Union Cemetery District on May 13th at 6 p.m. This one is at 6 p.m. And Mr. Gokenauer or Mr. Fry, who has the best update here? You're my appointee.
Well, Mr. Fry is the chairman of
Yes,
the cemetery.
he should know, yeah.
Well, what you'll find in the packet this evening is the 2020 budget that we've come up with, so that at the joint meeting of May 13th, you know, that's the time that we need to approve the budget for 2020 and also set the levy that needs to be set to fund the district in the for the year 2020. So as you'll see as we move further through the meeting this evening, the 2019 is being funded by way of seed money from Waterville and White House. So we've put this item in the agenda this evening for discussion so that you can all see what the budget is that we've come up with for 2020. At a bit of a disadvantage here because, you know, we're kind of working with some numbers that we don't know where this is going to end up. But a good portion of this 2020 budget is to get this district up and running and self-sustaining, so to speak. During the year of 2019, the Waterville and White House will be providing services to the district for the digging of graves, and since the district at this time has no equipment. So with that, I'll open it up for discussion.
Thank you. Questions from council, comments? Yes, Mr. Pedro?
I had a chance to sit in on part of the meeting, so Rod has heard these, but I, first of all, thank the committee for taking the time to look at various methods, and I'm in favor of this joint effort because I think it makes sense. But just a couple questions. One was I asked, for example, on expenditure, there was a line item for a pickup truck, and the suggestion I was offering, because we're just getting started, does it make sense to maybe, you know, rent or lease that for a year or two, and then perhaps purchase it? And then I think the committee had thought that through. The second thing was machinery for in this case, the mini excavator. I know there's some other equipment there, but does it make sense to maybe also lease or rent? And on that particular item, I was informed that item is very unique, and it's used not only for digging graves, but also other firms would rent them for ditching equipment, and that may not always be available. So I asked that question, and then getting way down in the weeds, this is like year number 2 or 3. For an example, on the revenue, there was an appropriation of roughly $6,500 for the lots at Wakeman and White House. I wondered then what type of, you know, marketing campaign would take place to generate more sales, and again, got a good answer that that's in the thinking process. That would be a little bit later. So overall, I don't have any heartburn on what's been planned, except that maybe some of those large ticket items is another way to skin the cat. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Pedro. I had the same question about the $102,000 for the equipment, with it being a new entity, and obviously maybe leasing some of it or phasing it in isn't a bad idea. For 19, we're covering the opening and closing of plots with our staff, and White House doing theirs. I kind of concurred with them on that a little bit. I don't know if, obviously you can lease a truck for a year or, my other concern is, when I met with, one-on-one with the sexton and for Waterville, because we had a decision to make, public probably doesn't remember, but when they came to us and said, we don't wanna do the cemeteries anymore, the township, you can do your own. We had no idea what it cost because of an old agreement. So I went out there and talked with him. And I do know he's planning on retiring, so we're probably going to have to, I don't know that you hire, it's not a full-time job to do the sexton part of it. So there's a lot of what ifs right there for me on year 2 or 3 out, you know, so you buy the equipment, but you may not have the people because you may need to outsource to somebody that does different cemeteries to do that. Or have we're going to need a bookkeeper type person. It shouldn't be very many hours. We have 16 hours a month on here. But that type of person could also, they're gonna use the UAN state auditor system, which Mr. Gokenauer is setting up and doing right now. But they are probably a person that could actually do the process of how you sell a plot, you know, somebody could probably learn that. I also found out there's actually a computer system, there's more than one software that actually does cemeteries. So I wouldn't maybe go back and you might not be able to put in the 1800s, but going forward, you can maybe computerize this as well. Make it a lot smoother, you know, a lot easier. There's a lot of paper because it's such an old cemetery, a lot of big books, very large books with the plots and hand-drawn maps. So there's a few different things we could do. My concern were the actual people. I know we're doing contract labor with the township, but if one that has the knowledge that does part of the work does retire, and then we buy equipment, you could always contract out the labor if you need to, but that's just a thought. I mean, yeah, mowing's a big part. So for me, I agree with Mr. Peter on that. I'm not sure what to do about. I do have a question on one line item. Mr. Fry can probably answer on tree maintenance. I know there are a lot of trees in there. I just drove through there as well, took one more look at the cemetery. And is that just to build up a balance in there?
Well, we've got
Or did they identify some?
we have not identified, we've identified a couple trees that need to be addressed actually probably yet this year. One of them in Wakeman and then the other one over in the cemetery and Weckerly. There's a tree there that needs to be addressed. In addition.
Did they do all the cemeteries or just, I saw your minutes from the tree commission. Did ours just do ours and somebody else did the others?
Well, White House was going to go ahead and look at the White House Cemetery.
Okay.
I've not seen the results of the tree commission study
Right,
yet.
I saw that.
I think I've seen in the minutes that I don't believe it's done yet, so
Right.
we're waiting to see that. But there's a lot of trees that need to be addressed in both the White House and the Wakeman Cemetery.
Evidently, they had no money for maintenance for the last 10 to 15 years for
Right.
trees.
They really haven't done anything.
So they're going to be a public hazard
Right.
liability headache. And two, one of which hangs over in Edward Jones' building, definitely need to be removed post haste.
In the Waterville?
In
I
White
do
House.
not
Oh,
know.
in White House.
It's the one in White House there, right there by that retail center.
All right, so that's just figured, so
We're
many
just-
trees are just a
Yeah,
number?
we're just
Right.
At least
allocating 20.
$1,000 a tree, and we know
Right,
there are
that's
20
enough.
to 25 that are.
They've identified, because in the tree commission, they haven't gotten back to us yet, but
Right,
that's a
but-
flexible number, I guess, for next year.
Yes,
Yes.
and they're well aware that there are many dangerous ones, and have they identified them? No, but they have told us it's crisis mode.
Alrighty. I think that was it. And the millage is, that we figured,
Based on this budget, the millage is .46.
okay.
I think the translation was $25 for $189,000 house roughly,
Yeah,
which is the mean in our city.
that's correct. So, and that's 2 payments a year, so it's $25 a year.
On a 200,
On
or
a
what'd you say?
$189,000
$189,000.
house.
Other questions? Down this way? This way?
Did you make a comment that they have no equipment that they're donating, Waterville Township?
It'd just be contract labor, as I understand it,
Yeah,
from them.
there's no equipment that's.
They have a
Very-
backhoe right now.
Yeah,
That's
but
it,
it's not
the
in very
right
good
size.
condition,
Yeah.
it's too large, it doesn't, this mini excavator will do a better job as far as getting in between the existing grave sites
Right.
and digging
We
the
have one of
grave.
those
Yeah,
in Waterville. As far as their truck mowers and all that, so that this would have their own, but in the time frame that White House is doing it, or the township, excuse me. So, you haven't gotten to that detail yet, like, they currently must be doing it, cause we're starting.
They're gonna finish the year,
They're tracking
and that's
themselves,
the contract portion.
right?
And then depending, again, when the levy monies won't come in until into 20,
20.
so there won't be
Right. Well, we're doing the,
money to go out and get things until you get the dough in about March.
that's why we're each putting the agreement.
Correct.
Putting the money in, the loan, but, back to my question of, tracking those two workers, cause they have to work for the township as well. How's that all shake out? How's that all gonna happen?
they're,
From Waterville's
they're
perspective.
providing us with a monthly statement indicating how many hours of service that they put towards the cemetery district.
Okay.
And we're also, at our next meeting, one of the agenda items is the supervision of those employees, so,
Cause they don't have a really big staff, yeah, so,
it's just the two of them
I
right
know.
now.
yeah. Alright, so just keeping it, track of it when you start and stop.
Yep.
And they would be kept on then,
We will keep them on as
Contract.
contracted labor. The equipment portion of it would go away if we went forward and bought this equipment in 2020. The other thing this budget does is it allocates 6 months' worth of contract and equipment services from White House and Waterville, because we're estimating that that equipment wouldn't be here till mid-2020.
Right, and they came up with a rate of the staff of our hourly rate when you see like the actual open closing part, and of what it would cost to rent, I think is what they did on the mini excavator.
Yeah, the budget that you see, we've allocated 145 dollars an hour, that's actually being changed to 150, and the breakdown is 50 for the labor and $100 for the equipment, and those are hourly rates.
Right, so we could account for it.
And the other issue with the mini excavator is, you know, you can go and rent those, you know, from rental agencies, but if we have a funeral and they're all out, and we
Right.
need to dig a grave, we got
We
a
would need
problem,
one,
so.
right.
and so currently they rent,
No,
No,
the Waterville Township with the current agreement, they do everything, and that's how it was years back.
so they
And
have
they
one.
had,
They have an.
our
They-
agreement, we pay them, or they,
They are looking to retain their equipment for their use on their township
Yeah.
roads and mowing the right of ways, so, you know, they will cover the, maintenance in the cemeteries this year, but
going
they're gonna
forward.
utilize their equipment for their own use, and,
We would be contracting only labor.
right.
But you see what I'm saying by that, so that's back to Mr. Pedro's question, like, we'll be using them because they work part in public works for them and part cemetery. But that goes back to the old agreement.
And but the sexton is gonna be retiring.
He is.
4 or 5 years, I
He said
understand.
like
Oh.
3 or 4, yeah.
And he's one of those.
And he's one of the
One of those
He works for
contracted labor.
Waterville Township.
Right, okay.
But he's always done that job as well. But I am saying with this new budget, there's opportunities. I mean, we're basing it on 40 a year in 2 cemeteries burials, but that's an average. And I only looked at Waterville's numbers when I brought all those back.
So that would be
It could
divided
go
by
up or
2.
down, yeah.
And so we're not paying any kind of benefits on this, it's just
Yeah,
contracted
you are.
labor.
They're figuring,
Oh,
they're
we
gonna
are.
charge you an hourly rate that equals their benefits and pay.
Oh.
Technically you are, but it's a contract labor rate. But once a year,
And
we
so-
will meet, the whole body will meet, whoever's on the councils in the union and the township, and you guys will decide the budget every year. And you can adjust the millage, and
Yes.
that will be every year starting in May, is why we're having this meeting, because we did the district. And like Mr. Fry said, after you have a year of numbers, you'll know a
Right.
lot more. But be aware, the numbers that he shared with me just on the water bill, it really fluctuates month to month. I mean, mowing stays the same, but mostly it depends on the year. But, I mean, that's pretty constant. But as far as burials, it just really fluctuates, so you have to take an average.
One of the toughest things is the township records were extremely poor. So we're doing the best we can on limited information to make sure
We'll
it's
have
done
enough.
correctly. And the good news is it anticipates that as these large capital expenses to start up go away, the millage is going to come down over time versus the other
Right.
taxes normally go up.
And it
Well,
could
that
ebb and
rarely
flow in a year.
happens.
Well, it could be
Come
more,
on.
it could be more of a
Come on, people.
a step down type of reduction, because in addition, we also have a lot of other deferred maintenance at these cemeteries. I mean, we've got to deal with the roadways have not been, I mean, they're in bad condition.
The Waterville is, yeah.
White
I'm
House
sure it
also.
is as well,
Yeah.
yeah.
Buildings aren't great, roads aren't great, trees aren't great, whole situation's not great.
I would agree, though, it's up to the council, after you get the investment, if this is what we do, then it should be paid for, and then it would just be the cost of labor, so.
Yeah, the excavator's useful life's about 20 years, the trucks have been going at least 10. The mowers should be interchangeable so that you don't have downtime, cause if you lose both mowers in the summer, you're in big trouble in a cemetery, cause there's about 40 acres total.
Right. Jumping ahead on the buildings, because we are, transferring ownership of the cemetery to the Union Cemetery District. On the 2 buildings, will the district receive payment from the township for using those? They use one as their town hall, and they use one for all their public works.
They were splitting the costs 50-50, I believe, and taking care of the utilities for the hall.
So they're splitting it with
The Union District's gonna be using half.
50,
The
and that's in
township
there.
will use half, that's where the cost would be split, and the town hall is all the town hall, so they're paying utilities for that.
And who owns it then?
The cemetery district.
Will
Cemetery
own it.
district.
Yeah,
So rent-free, but just utilities,
that's kinda how it is now.
right?
Yeah.
Well, in exchange for them doing
Well,
the work,
Mhm.
yeah, they were doing the work, so. Well, we discussed earlier with Mr. Bagdonis, you didn't do a further agreement for those buildings. I mean, sometimes in town, we do the old fire station for $1 and
Oh, we did a
but-
transfer.
yeah, something to think
and-
about.
And a lease, in effect, between the district and the township. For use of that building and 50% of the others.
But not a rent, just utilities.
No,
Correct.
no pay, rent pay. Yeah, have you been to the township hall?
Yeah.
It was old in 1890.
It used to be the morgue. That's where the body used to go.
Phil, they
Yeah.
built those buildings to last, come on.
Well, it
You
is.
know,
Yeah.
It's his,
Many
it's
others
his-
are built
That's
today.
for sure.
That's another issue too, is
I would think a small rent, I don't know, you're renting a building from
Well,
a
it's
district.
a good faith kind of
It's a
thing,
good-
isn't
right.
it?
some of those
Good
buildings.
faith
Not
kind of
talking
thing.
hundreds of
I like that
dollars.
idea.
No, but they do have.
$50.
our-
They're
and-
contributing their tax base to our
And
operations.
boy, are they.
Yeah, that's true.
Big time, roughly a third.
All right.
The other thing is, I don't have the list yet, but we're gonna have a bill of sale for blowers, shovels, other equipment. They're keeping what they need to maintain big roads, and all that'll be passed over at no cost to the
Okay.
district.
Sounds good. Other questions?
Do you have any comments? The
Other-
only thing, I guess I don't like keeping them, and I know them, as employees. I'd rather just have contracted labor there. So I don't know, how much was that discussed? You know, they wanna retain these guys because they've done it forever, and then they do this in the summer, and they plow, you know, mow some streets and plow in the winter. But is that in our best interest? I don't know.
Well, to start with, since nobody knows what they're doing but them, yes. And, I don't have the tax numbers, but that's a big base.
Yeah, And I guess, you know, we mentioned that the sexton might retire, and you know, ideally, someone's gonna have to learn the operation and how it works, and they're gonna have to actually teach us how to do a grave. I mean, it does require some legal requirements on how deep it is and how it, you know, it's done, and so that it's I think in the future, you know, they're gonna, the cemetery board has to decide how they wanna handle that, and I think in the near term, maybe the next 2-3 years, you know, they think that they should maintain the status quo just to make sure it's up and running and it's successful and that type of thing.
Okay, that's all I have, thank you.
Alrighty, any more discussion on that item? Because all our resolutions deal with it except one. So we need to pass a few resolutions before the May meeting. First one is Resolution 13.9, a resolution authorizing the mayor to enter into a cooperative funding agreement for the Fallen Timbers Union Cemetery. And Mr. Gokenauer, did you want to, I know we kind of touched on it. Give anything more on that?
It's
what we're
just
doing?
the cooperative funding agreement, it is in the budget, and it is a major source of funding for 2019, and it'll be paid back over a period of 5 years at $10,000 a year.
All right. Any questions? We need a motion. I'll move. Any second?
Second?
Any other questions? All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed?
I need to abstain
One abstain. Mr. Fry?
since I sit on the board.
Yeah. Next is Resolution 14-19, a resolution authorizing the municipal administrator to enter into an intergovernmental equipment services agreement with the Fallen Timbers Union Cemetery District. And this again relates to what we've been discussing. Mr. Gokenauer, anything new to add?
Other than, we did speak to the Village of White House, and they will have the same labor and equipment costs as we do at $50 per hour for the city or village employee and $100 an hour for equipment.
All right, we need a motion.
So moved.
And a second.
Second?
Are there any questions on this? I know we already discussed it, but any further?
Well,
All
that
the-
does cover holiday and weekends, because we averaged 150 takes care of ordinary plus the
Weekends.
weekend or holiday if there's a call out.
Time and a half, things like that.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Abstain.
One abstain. Okay, next we have an ordinance, 06-19, an ordinance transferring the ownership of the Wakeman Cemetery to the Fallen Timbers Union Cemetery District and declaring an emergency. Mr. Gokenauer, anything else to add there?
No.
All right. This was the actual transfer to the new Union Cemetery. I will make a motion that the rules be suspended to allow for the passage of ordinance 06-19 as an emergency measure. I need a second.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Abstain.
Mayor Brody?
Yes.
Mrs. Duncan?
Yes.
Mr. Pedro?
Yes.
Mrs. Bruno?
Yes.
Now I'll make a motion for final passage of ordinance 06-19, first and final reading as an emergency measure. And I need a second.
Second.
And any discussion on this item? Further comments? If not, roll call, please.
Mrs. Bruno?
Yes.
Mr. Pedro?
Yes.
Mrs. Duncan?
Yes.
Mayor Brody?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Abstain.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Next, we have Resolution 15-19, a resolution authorizing the municipal administrator to enter into an agreement with Proudfoot Associates, Inc. for engineering services to prepare plans, specifications, and bid documents for the 2019 paving program. And anything else to add, Mr. Gokenauer, on that?
No.
I think we discussed it a little bit earlier. Any other questions, comments from council? We need a motion.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next, I will make a motion to go into executive session to discuss pending potential litigation. And need a second.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Brody?
Yes.
Mr. Fry?
Yes.
Mr. Bruno?
Yes.
Mrs. Duncan?
Yes.
Mr. Pedro?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, thank you. There'll be no further action when we return back to regular session.